Good morning, and thank you for coming. I'm Douglas County Election Commissioner Brian Cruz. On behalf of myself, my Chief Deputy Chris Carruthers, our Elections Manager Justine Kessler, and Public Relations Coordinator Valerie Stowe, we appreciate you all coming this morning. We are here to talk about by-mail ballots and the voter ID law for voters for the November election. The voter ID law was first enacted in November of 2022 by the voters on the ballot in which they voted. It was first used by voters in this past election in May. I think it is noteworthy that in Douglas County, we had only 11 of the special provisional ballots from voters who showed up without an ID out of over 95,000 voters that cast their vote in the May election. That tells me Nebraska voters understand the voter ID law. The voter ID law for by-mail ballots will be completed at the time of requesting a ballot. We are mailing approximately 160,000 of these green postcards to voters in Douglas County. These are for voters who like to vote early and who have chosen to be on our early voting list. The law states that the ID must have the voter's name and photo on it. However, the address may be expired. The easiest way for voters is to write their Nebraska driver's license or state ID on the request. 97 to 98% of all registered voters in Nebraska have either a Nebraska driver's license or Nebraska state ID. If you receive one of these green postcards right here that Douglas County residents will get, you fill in your driver's license or state ID right here in these boxes, and don't forget to sign as well. If you do not have a Nebraska driver's license or Nebraska state ID, you may send a photocopy of one of the other accepted forms of ID. Some of those other acceptable forms of ID are a passport, military, or tribal ID, Nebraska political subdivision, state, county, or city. So if you work for Douglas County or the city of Omaha, those would be acceptable. Nebraska universities or college IDs, public or private. So the Nebraska University System, Wayne State College, Creighton University, College of St. Mary's, anything like that would be acceptable. Hospital, assisted living, or nursing home records are also acceptable as long as they have a name and photo on them. So again, if you are using your Nebraska driver's license or state ID, you simply write it in here. A photocopy of that is not necessary. A photocopy is only necessary when using one of the other forms. IDs that are not accepted, some of the forms: birth certificate, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security cards, out-of-state driver's licenses, private IDs with the name and photo. So membership cards such as Sam's or Costco. If you work for First National Bank of Omaha or Mutual of Omaha, most large businesses and medium-sized businesses now have badges with the name and photo on them. But if they're a private business, we can't accept those. If you do not have any of these forms of ID that are acceptable that we've discussed, you still have two options. You can obtain a free state ID from the Nebraska Department of Motor Vehicles. You may need a birth certificate to do that. And if you were born in Nebraska, you can obtain a free Nebraska birth certificate through the Department of Health and Human Services of Nebraska. If you choose to get a free ID from the Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV, we always encourage people, check their website or call them before you head out to make sure you have what's necessary to obtain that. Just to, avoids frustration for the individual. Or you may complete a reasonable impediment certification. A reasonable impediment certification would be filled out either at the time when you submit your early voting request or when you come in person to vote, or at your polling place. You could do a reasonable impediment certification for a disability or illness that prevents you from obtaining an ID, the lack of a birth certificate or other required documents to get a state ID, or a religious objection to being photographed. I think it is also noteworthy that, again, we had over 95,000 voters in May. We had 2 reasonable impediment certifications submitted to us, one at a polling place and one here in our office for early voting. Remember, a request must be submitted for each election. That is why we sent these in May, and we are sending these again now for November. If you do not get one of these in the mail and you want to vote early, you don't have to use this form. You could go to our website, votedouglascounty.com. Right on the home page is an early voting icon, and there's a form on there that you can use. However, if you get one of these, please use one of these. This is the most efficient way for us to process early voting apps. It's got a barcode that's associated with the voter. It has the voter's name and current address. We've made it easy for the voter to fill in their driver's license or state ID number from Nebraska. And don't forget to sign it again. We encourage voters to do this sooner rather than later. We're expecting about 150,000 early voting requests for the November election, which will equate to about 50% early voting and 50% polling place voting for the November election. So please, again, if you receive one of these in the mail, use that. We encourage voters to return these to one of our 13 drop boxes around the county. It's the most direct way from the voter to us. You write your driver's license number or state ID number on there, you put it in the box, we pick it up. Nobody sees it but the voter and us. Drop boxes are safe and secure. They're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're under camera surveillance 24 hours, 7 days a week as well. So if you request a ballot, sit back, enjoy August, the rest of your summer, watch a little Nebraska football in September, and ballots will begin to be mailed on September 30th. So just because you turn this in this weekend or next week, you won't begin to get ballots until September 30th. So if you like to vote in person voting starts at our office on Monday, October 7th. The process is pretty much the same. Bring one of the acceptable forms of ID with you. Again, we encourage those who like to vote early in person, come in the beginning, because as we get closer to Election Day, as we've seen in the past, lines get long. Remember, you can always visit our website, votedouglascounty.com, for additional questions or information. You can always call our office at 444-VOTE. We're here to serve the public, and we're happy to do it. So 3 important deadlines to remember, and then I'll open it up for questions. September 30th is when ballots begin to be mailed. Monday, October 7th is when in-person voting begins. And of course, Election Day, Tuesday, November 5th, polls are open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. All voting ends at 8 p.m. on Election Day, which means all early voting ballots must be in our possession by 8 p.m. on November 5th, either in a drop box or here at our office. And of course, polls close at 8 p.m. as well.